Hey, what's going on guys? In this review I want to talk about a game I've been playing for quite some time over the past year. It's called This War of Mine on my Nintendo Switch. Aside from my other film work and video work that you may have seen on my channel, I have always been a humongous fan of video games. I've loved them pretty much my whole life. It's my favourite medium besides movies, definitely. My favourite games include games like Dark Souls, Sekiro, other From Software titles. I've recently just finally got into the Batman games for a start. But I've also been really inspired by how over the decades the industry and the medium has really grown into its own art form. It's been able to tackle these really difficult subject matters. So with that said, I'd just like to give my opinions about this game and how it impacted me as a gamer, its pros and cons, and whether you should go out and get it yourself. So This War of Mine is both a strategy and survival game that was released in 2014 originally for the PC by the Polish developer 11-Bit Studios before it was released for PS4, Xbox and eventually the Nintendo Switch. It takes place in a war-torn environment which, according to the developers, was heavily inspired by Sarajevo and Warsaw during the Warsaw Uprising during World War II. Rebel groups and government officials are trying to fight over a bloody civil war to take control of this really ruined, run-down city. But instead of taking on the role as a rebel or a soldier, as we're usually accustomed to in these kinds of warlike games, the game instead turns things round and instead places us in the shoes of a small group of civilian survivors as they try to wade out the very worst of this conflict. As the player, you're responsible for making sure these people have enough food, enough water, enough shelter, enough security, so that they can wade out the very worst of the war. I'm just going to start this review by saying that this game is pretty excellent. It not only succeeds, in my opinion, as a very solid and engaging survival experience with a great crafting system, a great sense of community and characters, and very engaging gameplay, especially at night, but it also does a really great job of boldly using the medium to portray the sheer consequences of warfare in general. And that ties into the first great praise that I can give to this game, which is the atmosphere, the tone, the presentation as a whole is on point. It really does an excellent job of visualizing the consequences and the impact of war on people's lives. The tagline of This War of Mine is, "In war, not everyone's a soldier," and the game just hammers this in right from the beginning to the very end. The visuals and colours, or lack thereof, have an almost messy, very bleak and miserable look to them, and the music is perfect as you cycle through all these different events. The music does a really great job to really get you engaged and emotionally connected to what's going on. This atmosphere also ties into how the game portrays characters, especially the ones who you play as. All of them have their own goals, their own backstories, and despite the lack of voice acting, the game does a great job of really explaining these characters and allowing you to connect with them as they speak to one another through their use of dialogue boxes, try to encourage others, and also showing their reactions to certain events that have come. Whether they're just or unjust, the game continuously updates and, depending on their personalities, shows their reactions to whatever has happened, whether it be a murder, a theft, or saving some innocent person's life. But the most effective thing also comes with permadeaths. So basically, if they are killed while out scavenging, they starve, or they become far too depressed because of all the horrific events that are coming, they take their lives into their own hands. This use of permanent deaths is really effective in making you care about these characters and trying to make them survive throughout the game. This is an atmosphere and tone that of course doesn't come across as fun in any way, but that of course is the whole point of the game. And to me the game really does a great job of balancing that with overall some engaging gameplay, and it actually acts as the real thing that pushes you towards protecting these characters. It really pushes you to keep going back to the game and try to push through this very dark and depressing world so that you can protect all of your characters without anyone dying, so that you can get to the end and get them all to survive and go outside once more. Gameplay at the same time I think is just as engaging as the presentation. Basically the game is split between day and night. During the day you meet up with all of your characters in the household and you have to make sure that all of them have enough food, enough water, enough security, and the ability to get plenty of rest so that they don't tire out. The most important tool in the entire game by far is the workbench, which you can use to craft new equipment from all the materials you have, like spare parts, wood, and electrical equipment, to build more essential items. This includes beds so that people can sleep and recover their energy, wooden boards so you can board up walls to lower your chances of being raided by bandits. What I especially loved about this crafting system is that every material you gather and every piece of equipment you make has an important purpose. Building up your group so that they have enough of everything they need to survive and stay alive and to keep their spirits up. It's also really satisfying to just be able to take all your materials and use them to great effect and to populate your entire house with all these beds, equipment, just so you can create a much more comfortable environment that has more of everything you need. This crafting system also encourages you to really think about the materials you have and what you might need the next time you go out to find new materials to craft them. It really encourages you to take note and really think about the most important thing you need at the moment. Do I want beds at this point? Or should I get some more equipment like chairs or guitars that can keep them comfortable? Then there's the other part of the gameplay, the nighttime, and this is where the game gets especially intense. Basically, when the night comes, you have to choose who is going to go out to scavenge and gather more materials in the city, and who is going to stay, sleep, or keep guard. You also have to consider which building you're going to go through, looking at all their potential threats, and what you're going to need to take with you since your rucksack has only a very small number of spaces. Once this period's begin, basically your main objective is to find as many materials as you can in the shortest amount of time possible, also while keeping guard on any particular dangers that could be lurking about, any soldiers, any rebels, or any other scavengers that may be armed or may try to kill you on sight if they find you. This really adds to the intensity of every single area that you cover, as you have to really be very careful with where exactly you go and always pay attention to the signs and where you can scavenge in order to stay alive so that you don't lose another person whilst out scavenging and don't have to carry on without them. Similar to Fallout 4, the game really makes everything you pick up valuable. For example, when you're scavenging through all the rubble, you can find some spare parts and wood, and these can be just as valuable, if not even more, than snagging a whole new piece of equipment like a gun or a whole new can of food or something like that. But this is where the most memorable aspects of the gameplay really hit home for me, and where the game really impacted my time with it as a whole, as this period in the game really makes you come across some of the more horrific events that you yourself have to be part of and that you have to make decisions on as you go along. This includes theft, murder, or any other crimes that could be committed due to people being forced to scavenge and fight for survival in this rundown city. One instance I came across was an elderly couple that was living pretty much outside the city and had plenty of things to keep alive. They had medications and food. I went into their house, and basically, since my character was hungry, I ended up stealing their food and some of their medications. The elderly husband, unable to defend himself, simply just came round saying, please don't, that's my wife's medication, that's our food, please don't hurt us." And that kind of instance really did hit home, and it really also impacts your character as they can become really, really depressed because of how terrible their deeds were. This causes their depression to mount, and if their depression gets too high, this could of course lead to much worse consequences that come off later on. It gives you a look into the choices people in real life are forced to make, and truly how a war can really shatter and divide people in society and make them forced to scavenge and even kill each other just to survive. It's definitely moments like these that really impacted me the most throughout the game and really made the experience all the more memorable, in my opinion. One of the issues I did have with the gameplay, however, is the control system, as it did become a bit of a brain scratcher, especially the first time I was playing. Essentially, at times, this comes across when you are trying to cycle through these different options when you're playing. You may be swapping through options to give someone food, to switch between the cooker, or to get some food from the fridge. Basically, when you're playing using the D-pad, you essentially have to use the controllers to really cycle through the different options that you have. And basically, it doesn't really work the same way as you may think. It usually goes in a different order. This also goes, of course, for the combat system. The combat system itself, I think is really good. I really emphasise the use of stealth, as I normally didn't try to get into firefights, but the stealth itself can be really intense. While you're going upstairs, while you're running around, you have to make sure that you're not making enough noise. When someone is coming up, you can hide in a dark place, and once they come through, you can come out the back and stab them. But at the same time though, despite the instructions, at first I was kind of stuck at whether I should use the trigger button or the ordinary action button. Sometimes when that happened at the start, I would actually make the wrong choice and instead step out and make a run, when really what I wanted to do was just to take them out from behind. That caused one of my characters to die, and I even actually kind of cheated a little bit and reversed and went back to their character and to try and start again. My biggest problem, however, with this war of mine has to be the ending, as I felt it was very anticlimactic and ultimately pretty unfulfilling and unsatisfying. Essentially, this came at a time when I was basically working with my characters. And it felt like it was really building up to something. The temperature was dropping, all of my characters were getting cold, but then once, say, the 40th day ran, the game just ended right there. There was no send-off, there was no actual end, it felt, to the war. It really just stopped abruptly, like a winner, you're a winner screen, and it just shows you this screen of all the decisions you made as a character. Ultimately though, that is my biggest problem with this game, and I really wish that the ending did give a much more satisfying payoff that really showed the lasting consequences of your actions. But despite that, guys, this game as a whole is a really great demonstration of how games can be used to explore really sensitive subject matter while also not sacrificing the core gameplay and providing a satisfying and engaging experience. So that's just my opinions of this war of mine. I would love to hear your opinions about the game. If you would like that, please go ahead and leave them in the comments below. If you like this video, please leave a like. I really hope you found this review interesting, and of course, please take care.